Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to this week's podcast. In this week's podcast, I wanted to share an interview I did probably a month ago now with Sumit from Suminspire, a good friend and client of mine that we worked with for a couple of years, and I thought it'd be an interesting conversation to have and catch up with him and see how he's been or how he was handling with lockdown. And I'll leave some of his links in the description down below if you're on YouTube and in the post if you're on Facebook. So thank you so much for joining me again this week, and I'll see you very, very soon.
Sure. So my name is Sumit, and for those of you who don't know me, been working on various things in line with my business recently. So my business is based around corporate hospitality and supply chain, providing to various businesses such as Heathrow Airport and the various subsections within it.
In regards to your how you actually go about with your supply chains, have you seen a kind of hit? Because obviously with COVID, I think we'll start on that. I think as a lot of people will be aware, one of the airline industry was one of the first industries to really kind of cease to exist or kind of grind to a halt very slowly. Did you see kind of quite a large effect in the respect to from your perspective about how slow it actually came down, or was it kind of a slow trickle, or is it just all kind of stop, or what, kind of that in that respect?
I mean, I'll start off by saying the aviation industry is one of the most profitable industries there is out there. But it is also one of the industries that gets hit the hardest when you come across pandemics or when you come across any issues which affect global supply chains. So one of the things that this reminds me of in many ways, the whole pandemic around COVID-19, it takes me back to some thoughts from 2011 when we had the volcanic ash cloud, which grounded basically the whole world and its aviation industry in general. And the thing with pandemics and things which come about which affect global economy is with aviation, it's never a trickle down effect, it's a sudden halt. And I think the general size and the general revenue that gets generated from the aviation industry, I mean, it's such a hard fall because the bulk of my business and sort of many businesses that operate from within Heathrow Airport or London Gatwick, where we're supplying right now, is that it is a sudden halt because so many different supply chains are connected, so many companies are involved in the supply of products and sort of supplies around the globe, that it only takes an effect on a few of those companies for it then to start filtering down the chain. And being part of a supply chain for the last 10 years now of my career, one of the things that I've noticed is that we had 70% downturn in our revenue overnight, and the remaining 30% of basic business that we are doing right now is through sort of the sort of skilled workers, the key workers element. That's where we're coming into it. So a lot of that stuff is things that we've had to think outside the box as a business from. But general downturn has been absolutely phenomenal. Like, it's probably one of the biggest effects this has had on my career, and I know obviously on a lot of people are in the same boat. But as a business who operates fundamentally within the aviation industry, we felt the trembles of that pretty quickly.
Obviously, you said and you've explained that there was a kind of dramatic halt in the respect to your main supply chains and your main body of work. Have you seen or thought about using this time to really develop other strategies, other revenue streams outside of the main ones you talked to about the aviation industry? Because from my perspective anyway, it seems that you kind of suit a bit of a term, you had all your eggs in that one basket, and when that basket kind of, or when that revenue stream kind of stopped, it was possibly a more challenging situation for you to either come out of or exist in, if that makes sense. So has it given you some time to kind of think about how you're going to go about moving forward?
Most definitely. I mean, one thing that this pandemic has done is it's helped fast forward plans which were set out for the future. Um, and most definitely has helped fast forward plans which you don't necessarily get a chance to get around to focusing on because you're so busy focusing on the existing business. um, One of the things that I've always grown up with and sort of been taught from a young age is to never put your eggs into one basket. So with Pure, which is my brand, we never have relied solely on one income. We have obviously multiple streams. It's just unfortunate that with the current pandemic, there's multiple streams have all been affected. Um, but just to sort of elaborate on that further, you know, with you always have this final destination in your mind, and your destination should not change. It's the route that you're going to need to take to get there, and that's where you need to have multiple sort of streams of income, multiple sort of ideas, multiple sort of streams going into your business, which are going to build that brand further and further. So to elaborate further on that, people who are facing um, some sort of, if they're feeling they're kind of stagnant and things have come to a halt for them, they need to get creative. They need to think outside the box, and that's one thing we at Pure are constantly doing is thinking outside the box. And that's one of the things that filters all the way down from our ground staff, our kitchen staff, which goes all the way up to higher level management and to director level, is that everyone needs to get creative and think outside the box. So consider going online for a start. Every business is as strong as COVID-19, and that's the problem. A lot of people haven't future-proofed their businesses. They haven't considered doing it. They haven't even considered going online. And that's one of the things that we have started to do. We've started to push all of our services now to online, not just a small fraction of it. So from my side, in some ways it's been a bit of a blessing in disguise because it's helped us now prepare for any future pandemics, any future events which could potentially halt business. And I feel like we're going to come out of this stronger because our infrastructure is going to come out of this stronger.
Mhm. Is there anything specifically in the short term? Because obviously you've taken a financial hit because of the aviation industry, sort of grinding to a halt in that respect. Is there anything specifically proactively that you've seen that has really worked that you think you're going to keep on?
I think making use of technology, most definitely. I know we all use technology, but we never use it effectively. And I think now potentially having seen the benefits of people being able to work from home, having seen the costs that the company can reduce and still survive on. And that doesn't necessarily mean, making people redundant. It just means getting the most out of people and also allowing them to get the most out of their life. If they can spend time at home and still produce the same results, if not better for the business, then that's a win-win for the business. And I think also methods such as, I keep mentioning online, but giving the customers the ability, giving your corporate clients the ability and the flexibility as well to be able to use your services from online actually helps you reduce costs, helps you reduce the use of commercial space. So in the future, are we going to need huge operational buildings, or are we going to need small distribution centers from where we distribute from? And I think these are all kind of things which when we have now hit this sort of pandemic and had the ability to sit down and actually go through all this, you see that there's actually many savings that a business can make without having a detrimental effect on its employees.
Mm. No, definitely. I think that's really interesting. I think that a lot of people are going to use this time, and this kind of ties into my next question as well, to possibly think about starting their own new side hustle or their new business overall, or finding ways to, if they're in a current business, to really iron out those things that you discussed as well. But what advice? Because I know that a lot of people, as I said, will probably use this time to want to start creating a new business or a new side thing. What main pieces of advice would you give, or piece of advice would you give to someone who is starting? So is thinking of starting, is starting, or is going to be starting a new business?
Um, I mean, if it's going to be somebody who's starting up something for their own, they've got to change their mindset for a start, because I assume they're going to go from being an employee to an employer. So there is a hell of a lot different in your mindset that you need to tweak. You need to accept things for how they are. So until your mindset doesn't change, I don't think you're ever really truly ready for business. If that makes sense. So you've got to understand that you've got to do things which are different to what you've done before. You're going to have to put in some hard yards that you probably haven't done so before. By that, I don't mean you never worked hard. I mean you're probably going to have to work hard in a very different way, in a very smart way, compared to before. And I think the problem with a lot of this is people coming on board have got to come up with an idea which allows customers flexibility. And I think that's exactly what it's all about. It's about reducing um, costs for yourself, but at the same time, you've got to, you know, bring something to the market, which is not necessarily new, but it's something which brings about a product or a service, through creation, through thinking outside the box. And by that, I don't mean you need to future proof every single product of it or every single element of that product, but you need to definitely be coming into it, with a positive mindset. And one thing is for sure, which is it's survival of the fittest. Through pandemics, through um, anything which affects your business, it's not businesses which survive. It's actually people's mindsets which survive. The strongest survive through it, and I don't mean that literally. I mean that mentally. So businesses that survive, it's not the business which is surviving; it's the mindset behind it which survives. The strongest will survive from that. So you've got to have that drive, have that ability, um, and not necessarily the talent, but that work ethic to be in that small number which survive this pandemic and come out. It's the mindset which survives. It's not the business.
No, that's interesting. I think that I think it's really important as well, because from my side as well, and I think that everyone who is operating still in their own business, or in closely with other business owners, will find and have found this very difficult to actually go through. And from whether that is a financial perspective, or even just a why am I actually doing this perspective, and really using it from a perspective of, I am doing this, but why am I doing it? Right? Like, that's how I've been using it. That's how I've been thinking about it. And I've also been looking at it from a perspective of, where are my weaknesses? Where are the things that I'm not as strong with in the respect to my business, and where my revenue streams are, and what am I quote unquote relying on when it comes to revenue, as well, which has been interesting for me. For those who don't know, how did you want to briefly talk about how we met, and what our relationship is? Because I think that would be, I think for those, there could be some valuable bits in there, and I also think that it could be very interesting for those who don't know.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, first and foremost, I'm the sort of person who believes that when you come across somebody who's looking to create something, who's looking to um, make something, and the moment you kind of click in your mind that this person, has some sort of ability, you'd be a fool not to connect and look to make some sort of a business connection out of that. And I think with Carlton, yourself, I think when we first met, it was through an introduction. And I think we worked on some bits of content. It worked out well. and now there's endless things that we could possibly go into and create over time. And I think business connections and that as a rule is very important, because over time I think you're going to make a lot of business connections, and it's very important that when you're making these connections that you try and maximize them over time. Because a lot of people seem to be in this mindset, that you meet somebody, you do a bit of work together, and then you never going to see them. But the thing is, you never know in business when you might need to call on that person again for their services. So I think it's extremely important. But going specifically to Brunton Media, um, I've always found it a very professional outfit. I've always found um, that my sort of ideas are what shine through the videos and through the content, and it's not just not just Brunton Media's ideas. It's my content is what I want it to be. And I think that's what's most important about working with somebody who creates things, is they need to have the ability to understand what you want, because everyone brings their own style, everybody brings their own flair, everybody brings their own methodology. But ultimately, if you're the one creating content, you need that content to bring out the most of you in that. And I think I've always found that with Brunton Media, that it's always been a very professional service. But at the same time, look at the things we're working on. This blog for a start. So and this sort of audio. So there's various things that you can go into, but always more than happy to work with Carlton Brunton.
No, I appreciate that, but I just think it's not always necessarily it's interesting hearing it from clients' perspectives and things like that, because I have a very kind of one-sided view, um for obvious reasons, in the respect to like how a production went through and this and that, and I'm very focused on the product or the and the service, and making sure that it is what you exactly want it to be or need it to be, in that respect. So that's normally why I like to throw that question in there, because it's interesting for me to hear it from as a consumer's perspective and a client's perspective, seeing it from the other side, because that's something I rarely get to see. For the obvious reasons of I'm still focused on always kind of create more and always trying to build up, to actually creating more. We haven't actually mentioned on here those of you who and I don't know how much you want to go into Suminspire, but um the brand has, from how I've seen it anyway, since we started, has sort of changed. Or tweaked, or I don't know. Maybe you can pick up on like how you've seen that, but I know there was a definite, like, I think, pivoting point. I don't know whether you saw or agree with that in that respect, but do you want to talk a little bit about Suminspire, where you want to take it, what it is, and then where that pivot point was specifically? If you agree that there was a pivot point, you may not.
I think with Suminspire, you know, Suminspire is many things. It's not just an Instagram account or a person or a website. What it intends to do is present many avenues of clarity, of opportunity, and also a personal account of somebody who's gone through all the struggles, and in some ways is still going through all the struggles that anyone who's starting up in their own brand, in their own business, will have to go through. And I think one thing our media and sometimes entrepreneurs are guilty of is always showing the glorious side of being an entrepreneur, always showing the final product, the end product. One thing they don't often do, and this is what Suminspire hopes to do, which is different, is show their growth through the journey. I am by no means the finished product. I'm still at a stage where I'm still learning things and I'm still growing. But at what stage do you stop growing and you stop learning? And the thing is, you never do. That's in your own mind. If you think you don't need to learn anymore, you don't need to grow anymore, you'll find over time that your finances dry up. You'll find that you become quite stagnant. And it's a little bit like COVID at the moment, really, because those who are looking at COVID-19 as a stumbling block, as a doomsday, as the end of their career, these people have never thought outside the box. They're not looking at this as an opportunity. I see it as a massive opportunity. Yes, I'm losing some finances. We all are at the moment, but I'm looking at it as a huge opportunity to actually come out stronger, to come out with something which prompted me to make a change. Because without things which are going to knock you back, you're never going to actually improve. You need things to knock you back. You need things to knock you down. You need things to hold you back from progressing, because it makes you think, hey, maybe I need to take a different avenue to progressing. And I think that's what Suminspire is all about. And I think that change with it came with every change that comes in my life. And it's very different now to when we first started working together, when it was just, Sumit Anand, who was, doing some fashion shoots. And it's now taken a completely different direction because my life has taken different directions. And that's what Suminspire's fundamental base is. It's going to consistently keep changing because I intend for my life to consistently keep changing. And I intend for myself to consistently keep changing. And I think that's what, when someone looks back at the journey of my Instagram account, of any of my social media, or even of just suminspire.com, they're going to see a growth in that journey. They're not going to just see someone in their final element. They're going to see a growth of how that person got there. And hopefully that will be the fine print for entrepreneurs coming on board to actually follow suit.
Hmm. No, definitely. I think that that has been a interesting change from my perspective, because with every project, I always look at it going, how can we make this project better? How can we make this video better? How can we make it sure it hits the message better, or it's cinematography better, or we're pushing the boundaries in the respect to what we can make possible and what we can make happen, in that respect. So looking forward then, with Suminspire, do you have anything which you specifically been thinking about? Now this will be news to me, possibly, about specifically where you want to take it, some ideas on content. Again, you may not have any, you may not, but ideas on content, anything specifically you really want to aim for, strive for, in the next coming months and years, looking back on this podcast possibly as well.
Sort of going forward, and having been so preoccupied with the changes around COVID-19, not much work has gone into Suminspire of late. But that isn't because that's coming to a halt. That is simply because the strategy around that will look to change now, because life for me will look to change. So, we're going to be looking to work with other like-minded people in the future, to spread a positive message, not a lie, to spread the truth, and to spread, a very realistic message as to, what is going on around the world. And one of the things that we're going to be focusing on, and one of the things we're going to shoot, coming back once we're able to do so, is going to be this positive message about, being creative, about not being stagnant, about not sitting on your job, and having no plan B. And I think what I feel is generally what I create. So these are, my current thoughts and feelings. I can't sit here and say, Suminspire, we're going to record X, Y, and Z, because that could all change. With me, it's about just spreading the positive message. So whatever content allows me to get that message out is what we're going to look to do. In what sort of form, shape, or size it will take, I'm not sure right now. But be sure that, there's always going to be that opportunity for people to have that, that go-to person, that someone, let me go and reminisce, and let me have a look at how Suminspire would have done it over time, because I would have gone through the same hurdles, potentially am going through the same hurdles some of these people right now. So that's always going to be the message. It's not about, glorifying an account. It's not about telling people this is how much money I make, this is what car I drive, this is where I live. It's not about that. It's about being realistic and about explaining to people the pros and cons of being an entrepreneur. And if they understand that, they will actually come to know that there's always more pros than cons when it comes to going out on your own.
No, definitely. I think that there's, when there's an understanding from other people in entrepreneurs, and definitely when I started on more of a entrepreneurial road, it was definitely a scary step, but I think it was definitely from a self growth perspective, one of the best decisions I made in the respect to, it's allowed me to grow a lot more personally, allowed me to push myself outside of my comfort zone, a lot more, and I'm you can never be comfortable with pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, but like I'm at least more open to the concept of actually pushing myself outside my comfort zone in that respect. For you, because I know you've mentioned in previous content about possibly doing, obviously not necessarily like meetups now, but we might have to, you might have to change it to more virtual meetups and things like that, until COVID sort of disappears, or however that actually goes about it. But you talked early on about specifically doing some kind of coaching or consulting, or that kind of thing. Is that something you're still looking to do? And if so, kind of could you talk a little bit about what that could shape up to be? Obviously, there's nothing concrete, because I imagine you're still building it, you're still thinking about it, and it's still going to develop in time. But more of a situation of just give a little taster of, see what could people expect, those who may be interested in that.
Yeah, most definitely. I think coaching is the forefront of everything we're looking to do. There may well be a time delay now due to the current situation um, around that, but I think more than ever, the world needs coaching now. If there was ever a period that somebody needed some advice, it's now, because this is it's not often that your career comes to a complete halt. You face redundancies or you face job losses overnight, and that's been the detrimental effect of COVID. That that's what it's led to. So most definitely, coaching is still a part of that, and we'll be looking to launch that very soon.
So I think that what jumps to mind to me is going to be, I think, how like both Pure and Suminspire will overall develop across, say, the next year. And is there anything that you specifically, so if everything goes well, you would love to hit, it might be a follower target, it might be a monetary goal, it might be, specifically, is there any specifically like a metric or a goal which you're specifically looking at the moment, or for either?
First and foremost, in terms of the business at the moment, it's about stabilizing, and I think any business that is currently operating, if they are even looking, if they manage to even break even by the end of the year, that is a massive achievement. And there's no shame in admitting that a lot of businesses are going to be looking at huge losses. So if you can in some way hold on to your job, or if in some way as an entrepreneur, if you can even look to break even by the end of the year, you've done extremely well. Now, one of the things a lot of people need to start investing into is some sort of passive income. Passive income starts slow, it starts small, but over a period of time, that passive income actually becomes one of your main breadwinners. So I think there's so many elements that people have to consider. There's so many things. There's so many different ways you have to look at this. And if people are going to be looking to make tremendous amount of sums from COVID, then those are going to be the entrepreneurs. So you've got to use lockdown. You've got to use these days are not about sitting at home and watching Netflix series after series and running your account dry. You should be researching into things. You should be looking to see what you can possibly do going forward, instead of bemoaning and criticizing your employer who's looking to make you redundant, or possibly having furloughed you, and or if you haven't been furloughed and you wish you were furloughed. Instead of wishing those things, wish you were better, wish that you had more skills, wish that you were able to produce something. But wishing alone isn't enough. You've got to, instead of that, you've got to turn around and say to yourself, instead of me wishing, I'm going to do something about it. So next time around, I don't have to wish, I have the skills to move forward.
No, definitely. And I think that a lot of people will find, I mean, for me, I always think about it in the perspective of, say lockdown ended tomorrow, and am I gonna hate and not hate myself, hate's the wrong word, but dislike how I spent the time, or am I going to be proud of what I achieved, given the time was very difficult and given the time where the odds are not meant for you to actually learn, or actually, grow, or actually build more brand, or do this or do that. You're not meant to right now. Obviously, obviously we don't know what you're meant to do, because this has never happened in the way it's happened before. But I think that's very important from my perspective, and that's what is motivating me to continue to push forward with Brightner Media and with what I'm doing, as well. Like launching this podcast and really leaning into it during lockdown is a key example, of that as well. You briefly mentioned passive income. Now this might link to my next question as well, but could you just sort of like briefly explain how you see passive income, and what possible streams or theoretical streams you may have as passive income? Because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand, firstly, the concept of what passive income is, because I think there's a kind of misunderstanding in the regards to what it is. So could you first explain, what is your definition of passive income, and then give a couple of examples of what you, like in practicality, is your passive income streams?
So as an entrepreneur, passive income is one of the main things that you look to invest into, or is one of the main things you look to create for yourself as an income stream over time. So investing into properties, whether it's commercial or residential, and having the ability to pick up rent from them, over the obviously set periods. I mean, that is a prime example of passive income, because it's something which starts quite small, because you're obviously not going to end up with a property portfolio of 25, 30, 50 properties overnight. You're going to start from one property, you're going to then grow two, you're going to grow three. But I think what people are guilty of over time is, they don't look at these things, and then they get to a stage in their life where they wonder, could they have done more? And the answer is yeah. Money management is extremely important as you progress through your career. Don't look at your job as your breadwinner. Your job is there just to pay your bills. Your 9 to 5 is there just to pay your bills. That's all it does. What you do between 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. the next morning is what's going to build your career. It's what's going to build your mindset. It's what's going to build your future. People spend 50, 60, 70 years in jobs, and then feel like they have nothing to show for by the end of it. And that isn't because there isn't opportunities out there, or anything. There are opportunities out there. It's just that they have spent their 9 to 5 every single day thinking that is what makes their career. It doesn't. It just simply pays your bill. Tell me one person who got rich today from a 9 to 5. And I'll tell you what, there isn't any out there. The reason is because even those who get rich from a 9 to 5 have side hustles, have passive income streams which are consistently coming into their bank accounts. And that's what builds their future. That's what allows them to get bigger properties, more investments. It's not their jobs. The jobs are just there to pay the tax and pay the bills. Simple as that. Sorry to burst anyone's bubble who disagrees with that, but that is a fact of life. And that's what I would suggest as a passive income stream is, those kind of things. How about investing into something you can hire out, equipment you can hire out, a fleet of cars you can hire out. They don't have to be brand new, Mercedes Benz. They could just be very basic things. But you've got to have a side hustle if you are ever going to get out of that rat race of a 9 to 5 job. And people always say, what's the point of becoming an entrepreneur? You have to work odd hours. You do. And that's the thing about being an entrepreneur. Everything you do is for yourself and for your family. Now, with a job, you cannot look after your family, because the only thing, a job allows you to do is pay the bills and potentially pay your own personal bills. You've got to get entrepreneurial. You've got to, get out there. I'm not saying you have to come up with the next invention out there in the world. You don't have to be the next Albert Einstein. But there are so many things you can look to do out there which allow you to build passive income. One of the things you need to potentially go and is go and educate yourself, even if that means going out there and getting a degree. Even if you have another one, why don't you do an online course? Why don't you get a better understanding of something? Your passion, whatever your passion is, you can always look to generate income from that.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I think there's there's this misconception with passive income that it's just free money. And the way I see it is I put in time now and it will generate me revenue through the longer term. Like for example, a lot of my business models come off I produce a piece of content and then that piece of content lives online and it's basically a passive ad for what I do. Right. So I create video, I create a cool video, I put it up online, and then that video sits there and, it gets viewed by, say, for example, we had never met, but you consume a piece of my content and then a couple of weeks pass. Oh, you consume another piece of my content. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. And then you're in a situation where you go, oh, it'd be great to have a video of this event, or it'd be great to have a video of me talking about XYZ. Then whose likelihood that you're going to go to, right? I would hope it would be me because you've seen my work, you know what it is in that respect. And that's where I think that some videographers and creative people, get stuck in the respect to, people ask me, oh, how are you finding lockdown? How are you finding this? How are you finding that? And I'm like, I'm as busy as ever, right? Yeah, yes, client work is slower, but that's just because of just the barriers in which are in the way at the moment. There's still thousands of things I can be doing that will have a net positive result in the long term for me and my business. In that respect. And I think the sooner people, I guess, in some ways realize that and in some ways put things into action is going to be beneficial for them. What advice would you give to people who, because a lot of people go, oh, I don't have XYZ, right? So in my case, I don't have a camera, I don't have a light, I don't have a microphone, whatever it may be. What advice would you give to people who, I guess the question is that don't know how to execute or don't have the willpower to execute or don't know the best way to execute? Because for me, the difference between someone who I would say will become successful and won't will be whether they can execute on their ideas or not.
Sure. So one of the things that stops people from executing their ideas is mostly money, to be honest with you. It's finances. And it's incredible when you hear people say, I just don't have the money for it. I don't have that kind of money. And it's astounding because those same people will go out every single Friday night and spend £200. And without knowing, they've spent £800 over the course of a month. And they don't realize that if they had actually saved that money for the course of a year, they would have enough to invest into exactly whatever they wanted. Another example is habits like, cigarettes. People spend nearly £10 a day buying packs of cigarette. People spend, if we take away the monetary value, if we now come down to time, the other thing is people say, I don't have the time to start a business. I don't have the time to invest into one. Well, you have time to watch Netflix for 3 hours a day. You have time to watch TV. You have time to create creative dishes to eat every single day. You have time to go to the gym every single day. You have time to be off sick from work. You have annual leave every single year. You have plenty of time. It's your priorities which are wrong the whole way. It's never the means. And one of the things you mentioned, I don't have a camera, I don't have this. You have a smartphone. You can always start from somewhere. Tesco did not start online deliveries. Tesco didn't end up with thousands of stores overnight. They started from somewhere, right? Sky Sports, Sky, all these businesses out there, Sainsbury's, your Next, your Louis Vuittons, whatever they might well be, they didn't just end up with what they have today from the beginning. They didn't just start with that. They built it. You have to build every single thing in your life. Just like you build your relationship, just like you build your bond with your daughter or your son or whatever it may well be. That doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. You have to go through the process. And it ties in with one of the first few things I said at the very beginning. people are not willing to invest in themselves, and this is one of the biggest problems out there. You have to be willing to invest in yourself. So there is no excuse for a lack of finances. There is no excuse for a lack of time, because it's there. It's just you're not prioritizing it.
So I hope you guys did enjoy that short interview with Sumit. It was caught off a little brief short because he had to run away and join a conference call for Pure. But I hope you guys still found value in this episode. And if you have got to this point in the video, I'd really appreciate a like, and love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. And if you're brand new to the channel, why not subscribe so you can be notified when the new podcast goes out every single Monday at 6 p.m. But I thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this podcast, depending on how you're choosing to consume it. And yeah, I'll see you next week for a new interview with another filmmaker.